Hey, Saber here. I know, a very innovative name. We'll be checking out how our king turned out. We'll first check out her pretty unique kit design, then her Eidolons and how strong they are, and then the best builds I calculated for you guys. We'll check out Relics, planars, Lycones, and more, and finish with pull value and Synergies. But let's be real, I think every Fate fan is gonna pull her. Like and sub and share if this video helps you out, and now, let's have a look at Saber. Saber is a wind destruction unit and is our second of this combo, with our first one being buffed in the very same patch. She has a pretty nice base attack as well as a very chunky defense, must be the shoulder pads. She also has a stupidly high energy cost, but as always, it's just for show. As for trace priority, you will want to invest first into her EXCALIBUR, and then her skill and basic attack, and then finish with her talent. But now, let's check out Saber's kit. There's a whole lot of things going on, so let's first explain Core Resonance. Core Resonance will be stacked up through various ways in Saber's kit. For example, from her own abilities. Every Core Resonance will correspond to 8 fixed energy, and you will see the energy it would provide on her ult meter. I wish it showed up numerically on her energy meter and her stat screen, but that's okay. So, for example, if she has 10 Core Resonance, you will see 80 energy worth of potential energy on her ult meter. This means her skill that generates 30 energy and 3 Core Resonance will generate 30 immediate energy and 24 potential energy through the Core Resonance. Does that make sense? You won't immediately have the energy, but it's still there waiting to be activated. And how do we do that? Well, let's see her skill. She will perform a blast attack with an OK multiplier, but the whole kit flow is centered around the next bit. If she holds Core Resonance and the sum of her energy and the fixed energy from her held Core Resonance would max out her energy, so 360, then two things will happen. First off, the attack will get a multiplier bonus per Core Resonance, and this applies to all 3 targets hit separately. So 10 stacks, that's an extra 140% attack multiplier on each target hit. Groovy. But then, secondly, she will consume all of these stacks and regenerate an equivalent amount of energy. So again, you have 10 stacks, well that's 80 energy. And since you can only perform this consuming move when she has enough Core Resonance to max out her energy, that basically means you will be able to ult. We will call this variation of her skill her Consume skill. Now, technically a third thing will happen in her A2, so let's look at that. First off, we get a 20% crit rate buff. By the way, for whatever reason, this only appears in combat. But then she will gain the Mana Burst effect after every enhanced basic attack, and gains one at the start of the combat. To put things simply, before we look at said enhanced basic attack, she will have a permanent effect called Mana Burst unless you're in DU or E6 or something. What this Mana Burst does is that if your skill can generate enough energy to cap out her energy with the Core Resonance from earlier, she will get an immediate advance forward. So energy is kind of another way of advancing her forward. It's really interesting. You can, for example, take your turn, ping an ult on her, and if she has enough total potential energy, she will just be advanced forward. She has a strong reliance on energy. So in simpler terms, if your energy plus your Core Resonance energy equals 360 or higher, you will first immediately advance forward, and then you can skill, which will get a big multiplier, and then regenerate an equivalent amount of energy corresponding to the stacks consumed, which will let you ult. If it's your turn, you can also include your skill's 30 energy for the 360 threshold. I hope this helps explain things. Now, if that scenario doesn't happen, she will just have a regular skill and generate 3 Core Resonance. Okay, now for the ult. EXCALIBUR! She would deal damage to all enemies and then dish out 10 bounce attacks with a pretty substantial multiplier. So she can wipe out weak enemies, and then the bounce attacks will focus the remaining alive ones for some insane lower target performance. After she uses her ultimate, her basic attack will be enhanced and you will also be forced to use it. Her being forced to use it though creates something interesting, as she now physically cannot use her skill, which means she will not activate her A2 from earlier and get her advance forward if she has enough energy, because she technically needs to be able to use her skill to consume the Core Resonance for this A2 to work. So this means you ult, enhance basic, and if you have enough energy, you would get an immediate advance forward. This saves you from having weird advance issues sometimes. So, onto that enhanced basic, which will be able to be used once after every ult. She will gain 2 points of Core Resonance and deal damage to all enemies. It's not bad for AoE. But if you're into lower target fights, you also get a bonus with a 150% attack multiplier increase on all enemies when versus 2 targets, or 220% when versus only 1. And finally, to tie everything together, her talent. She gains an initial 1 core resonance, but then, when any allied target uses ultimate, she will get a damage buff, consider this permanent, and then she will gain 3 core resonance. This includes herself. So, frequent support ults are another way to synergize with Saber, but you will need to make sure you don't waste her advance forward for optimal play. As for her technique, it's max aura farming and gives an OK attack buff as well as 2 core stacks. But let's finish with her last 2 passives. Her A4 is a banger. Saber can accumulate up to 120 overflow energy, and she will gain said overflow energy after ulting. This is really nice, as you will sometimes get so many core resonance stacks that you will overcap on energy easily, and it also creates some safety with synergistic units like Sunday and Ho-Ho. It means you can also stack an ultimate, use it, do a quick rotation, and maybe even have another ult ready. Very fitting for her gameplay. In this passive, she will also always regenerate 60% of her energy when the battle starts. It helps in Overworld and is better than the usual half energy gains in endgame. And then her A6 is just a massive crit damage buff. It will be pretty much permanent, and so will the stacking crit damage buff from obtaining core resonance. A cheeky 82% crit damage buff. And finally, in trace bonuses, she'll get some crit rate, some win damage bonus, and a bit of HP. To sum up her gameplay loop without considering advanced forward units, it will be skill until your potential energy can hit 360, in which case she will be advanced, skill again, consume her core resonance for big damage and energy, then she will ult, enhance basic, and then back to the start. In the case of a ton of energy, she can even enhance basic into an immediate advance into a consume skill into another ult. It's very satisfying when you can make it happen. Now, before we talk more about her and her best builds, Eidolon time. Her E1 will give a simple damage buff to the ultimate, and a nice 1 core resonance on top whenever you basic or skill now. It's gonna mean more multipliers for her consume skill, and more energy overall. Lovely. Her E2 will give a ramping and permanent def ignore based on the amount of core stacks she generates in a fight. This will max out easily. But the real source is a nice extra multiply increase for every core resonance stack consumed in her consume skill. And then her E4 is a very simple but decent stacking res pen, with a base of 8% and a stacking 4% every ult up to 3 times. Not bad, but not crazy. Finally, her E6. She'll first get an initial res pen buff to specifically her ultimate. Then she can now overflow by 200 energy rather than 120, coolio. But then, after ulting for the first time, she will generate a fixed 300 energy. That means instant ult back to back. And not only that, but it can trigger again after using 3 ultimates. We truly brought fate mechanics to HSR. And here are my Eidolon calculations for our king. She doesn't have crazy vertical investment options compared to some HSR flagship DPS, but they're mostly decent. And her E6 is a little tricky because it's very ultimate breakpoint based. So the more ults you can spam, the more ults you can spam again. Weird, isn't it? So, what armor do we want to equip Saber with? Well, we have a couple of options. First off, you can use the new Wave Strider set. It's just going to be 48% attack on every ult, which is her most important ability. It will also give set attack buff to her enhanced basic, which does decent damage. And if you ult on her turn, the buff will stall until her next turn, and will therefore also boost the skill. Pretty great stuff. But Scholar Lost in Erudition is just fine too, as you get a permanent skill and ult buff with another boost to 1 skill every ultimate. For plain ornaments, you can really go with whatever generalist DPS set. Glamoth, Spacing Station, Rutilant Arena, Inert South Soto. They're all close in power, just use whatever you farmed that has the best mains and substats. Main stats will want you rocking a crit damage chest. She gets so much crit rate from her and her best supports. Then speed or attack boots, most of the time speed. And then attack or win damage orb. And then finally an attack rope. Remember, her core resonance is all fixed energy anyways, and she really lacks attack percent, so stick with this attack rope. For a stat goal, you'll want to hit 2.5 to 3k attack, then 135 or base speed, mostly 135, and then for crit rate hit 100% in combat, and remember she gets 20% in combat from her A2. Crit damage can be something decent, but she self-buffs a ton in crit damage, and again, her best supports all grant a bunch, so don't worry too much. And what about light cones? She needs a weapon fit for a king, right? Her signature will first give a nice 36% crit damage. Then when using your ultimate, you will get a 2-turn 40% attack buff. If the wearer's max energy is above 300, then you'll get an additional 40% attack buff for 2 turns, and you will also regenerate 10% of your max energy. Saber will obviously fulfill this, so a whole ton of buffs, as well as 36 energy recovered every ult. Her signature is a pretty strong upgrade over free-to-play options, as the calculations I have here are all based on only damage gains with the same ult rotation. I did not change rotations because it is way too finicky with all the advanced forward shenanigans and supports. So in practice, her signature will be a bigger improvement than you see on this chart. If you manage to hit an extra ult with the energy, for example, you get another 10% gain over Eon. But even outside of extra ults, the energy gain is very nice for consistent rotations, as you might miss some turns in general without it, which also isn't shown in calculations. But Eon is free and strong, and here are some other options for her. So how strong is she? Well, in MOC and AS, she is a solid carry. Nothing power creepy, but not bad either. Decent overall damage, and a lot of consistent damage, which is important, even if the ults are the major part. She is a bit clunky with her advance forward. I got really annoyed sometimes, and it would sometimes mess up with enemy hits. You will have to be mindful with ally ult and energy ult specifically, as well as her own turns, but when optimized, she can blow things up quite nicely. I can also see a world where she gets better as she synergizes really nicely with energy, and I don't doubt that future energy supports will come out eventually. But as of now, I'd rank her decently in MOC and also Apocalyptic Shadow. If there is an ultimate gifting AS mechanic, she really shines, but I haven't tested her without it. In pure fiction though, she is going to perform worse, but not that badly from my experience. She has an AoE ult, bounce an ult, and then an AoE enhanced basic. You have a lot of wave clearing power. She isn't going to be a top tier like the Herta, Castress, or find an easier S1, but she's one of the stronger destruction clearers for PF. Excalibur's AoE damage into a single target nuke on the middle enemy is quite powerful. And after all that, we can look at her synergies and teams. The classic Sunday or Bronya will be wanted in that first support slot. Sunday is pretty important for her. You can't keep doing this to nearly every DPS. Energy is a key part of her kit's gameplay flow, and 72 energy for her every Sunday ult is very strong. And those many turns she takes back to back, well, Sunday's buff uptime won't really falter unlike other advanced supports. Bronya is usable if no Sunday, and she's actually still pretty good anyway since she offers good buffs, and the SP difference between her and Sunday isn't too bad in Saber teams. The energy missing is sad, but it won't be the end of the world for clearing. For example, in an energy gifting Apocalyptic Shadow, they should clear quite closely. For the next slot, you'll want a Robin, Tingyun, RMC, or your classic perma buffers like Ranmei, Cypher, Tribby, Silverwolf. I won't go through all the last 4 units as it's self-explanatory by now, but let's talk about the first 3. Robin first offers so much attack, and Saber desperately wants attack due to the large self-damage and crit buffs. She offers other buffs too that we don't mind. But the team advance is really massive for her rotation. Saber acting, Sunday skilling, Saber acting again, consume skill, Robin ult, Saber ult, act, Sunday, Saber again. You get the idea. Letting your whole team act again is really strong for a unit that wants to act to generate energy and core resonance, especially when paired with an advanced buffer. Tingyun would act in a similar way to Robin, offering energy instead of more turns that would generate said energy. Also, a ton of attack just like Robin. I definitely would rather use Robin, but maybe she's held up in another team or not in your account, as I assume a lot of new players are joining for Fate. And Remembrance MC is another fantastic free-to-play friendly option. The ideal rotation with them, however, is with a Sunday, as you could run Attack Beat Saber, RMC advances them with Mem ahead of Sunday, then the rotation happens. Saber gets so much energy, and Sunday also generates a ton, so Mem should be charging up like crazy and rotate fast enough to consistently achieve this combo. It will require manual play and proper Mem ult timing, and you will probably want easier S1 Sunday to allow RMC to skill spam. But it is juicy, as that maximized true damage buff is insane for damage versus the regular diluted buffs most other units give. And for sustains, your best 3 options are Ho-Ho, Gallagher, and Hyacinth. Ho-Ho is her general best, as she can skill more often thanks to Saber's decent SP economy, and her giving energy and core resonance every ult to Saber is big, but then energy to Sunday who batteries Saber, And then she gives energy to Robin for Perma Concerto and tons of advance forward. She's such a good classic sustain. Gallagher is the goat of being there when you need a good reliable sustain, and he is also a free-to-play friendly option. He can use Sagados, Quid Pro Quo or Shared Feeling, and he can use all of these really well, giving buffs and or energy to Saber. But Hyacinth is there if you need some power. Since you're bringing Saber to wind weak stages anyway, why not bring along a sub-DPS wind sustain at the same time? She will have access, just like Huohuo, to SP in the right team, but she can also just spam basic and perma-heal your team with some OK damage. So for our premium team, you have the Welcome to HSR team, which I love is a thing for a collab event. Huohuo, Sunday, Robin. In AoE fights, you can go for the Honkai style Tribi team with Hyacinth, Sunday, Tribi. And for a free-to-play friendly team, you'd go for Sunday or Bronya, Pingyun, and then Gallagher. Anyways, I hope you enjoy Saber. She's quite satisfying to play when she's hitting her peak combo. Let me know what you think of her, and like and sub and share if you enjoyed this guide. Thanks for watching, thanks to my amazing YouTube members, and have a Guoba day.